You ever sit there, look around, and realize you're surrounded, but you're still alone? Funny, huh? That you could give people everything, your time, your heart, your loyalty, and all they do is step over it like it's garbage on the sidewalk. That's the joke, right? You walk with them, laugh with them, even bleed for them. And the second you trip or slow down, they leave you behind like you were never there to begin with. Let me tell you something that no one wants to admit out loud. Most people don't value you. They value what you give. And once the giving stops, so does the pretending. That smile, fake. That concern, temporary. That friendship, conditional. You don't really matter to them, you just matter to what they can take from you. And the moment you stop playing your role in their little play, the moment you stand still and ask, hey, what about me? They vanish, ghosted, erased, like you were never real to begin with. And I know, I know how bad it hurts. Because you thought they cared. You thought walking with them meant something. But truth is, you were walking alone the whole damn time. Now, you want to know what's worse than being alone? Pretending you're not. You see, people think being alone is the worst thing in the world. They panic at the thought. They rush into rooms, into crowds, into fake friendships, just to avoid hearing the sound of their own silence. But let me tell you what's worse than standing alone. It's standing next to someone who doesn't give a damn whether you fall or fly. It's laughing with people who wouldn't even notice if you disappeared. It's sacrificing yourself for people who wouldn't cross a puddle for you. That's hell. That's betrayal in its rawest form. And yet we keep doing it. Why? Because we want to be seen. We want to matter. We want someone, anyone, to say, I see you. I care. But here's the brutal, filthy, ugly truth most people choke on. Not everyone who stands beside you is with you. Some just want your warmth, your light, your protection, your resources. And once they've drained you dry, they toss you to the wolves and say you were always too difficult, too sensitive, too intense. They'll twist your loyalty into weakness and your kindness into a flaw. And by the time you realize the game they're playing, it's too late. You're empty. And they're long gone, already feeding off someone else. So what now? What do you do when the people you stood for never stood for you? Do you shrink? Do you chase? Do you beg them to see your worth? No, you don't. You rise, alone, cold, silent. You walk away from the crowd, even if it hurts, even if it bleeds, even if it means nights staring at walls, questioning everything. Because here's the power in standing alone. It's real. It's raw. It's you. No masks, no leeches, no fake handshakes. You finally get to see who you are without the noise. And that silence, that emptiness, it becomes your training ground. Your solitude becomes your rebirth. Because the ones who walked away, they never deserved to walk beside you in the first place. And the moment you realize that, The moment you accept that not everyone deserves access to you, you become dangerous. You become focused, unbreakable. You stop explaining yourself. You stop apologizing. You stop lowering your voice just so someone else feels tall. And don't let them come back. No. When they see you alone and glowing, when they realize you didn't fall apart like they hoped, they'll try to creep back in with old jokes, with fake apologies, with that "I miss you" act. Let them knock, let them cry, let them scream, but don't you open that damn door, because they chose to leave when you needed them most. They chose silence when your soul screamed. And now you choose peace. Let them feel the loss. Let them drown in their own guilt. That's the consequence of mistaking loyalty for weakness. That's what they get for treating a blessing like it was disposable. And maybe, just maybe, the silence you gave them will be louder than any scream they ever deserved. You know what's twisted? People don't realize they had something priceless until they're staring at an empty space they can't refill. And by then, it's too damn late. They'll replay the moments you stood there, giving everything without asking for much. They'll remember the times they made you wait, ignored your messages, brushed off your feelings, and they'll try to convince themselves it wasn't that bad. But deep down, they know. They know they messed up. They know they took advantage. They know they had someone who was real in a world full of fake. Someone who listened without judgment, stayed without reward, and gave without conditions. And they threw that away like it was nothing. Why? Because they thought you'd never leave. They believed your kindness was eternal, your patience bottomless, your loyalty unshakable. But everything has limits. Even the purest heart has a breaking point. Even the softest soul gets tired of being walked on. And the day you finally choose to walk alone, that's the day they lose access forever. That's the day you stop being the background character in their story and start becoming the main character in your own. People love to talk about how they miss the old you. But what they're really saying is they miss the version of you that tolerated their disrespect. They miss the fool who kept forgiving, kept answering, kept giving them another chance after another damn chance. They don't miss you. They miss the control. They miss the benefits. They miss the warmth they never earned. But they don't miss you because they never saw the real you to begin with. They were too busy using you to look deeper. They were too selfish to ask what you needed. And now that you've changed, now that you've gone quiet, now that you've built walls and burned bridges, they're lost. And good. Let them say lost. Let them wander. Let them regret. That's the price of playing with something pure. That's the tax of betraying someone who would have given you the world. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't even owe them a goodbye. You owe yourself peace. And that peace starts the moment you stop looking back And yeah, it's not easy. Walking alone ain't some fairy tale power trip. It's dark. It's heavy. There are nights where you stare at your phone hoping it lights up. Mornings where your chest feels like it's being crushed by silence. Days when you question if you were ever truly enough. But that pain, that's the withdrawal from fake love. That's the detox from people who drained you. And you gotta go through it. You have to face it. No shortcuts, no distractions, no going back. You fight through it minute by minute, scream by scream, until you come out the other side harder, smarter, colder. That's what growth feels like. It's ugly. It breaks you. But it builds something better from the wreckage. You become someone who doesn't chase, who doesn't beg, who doesn't explain their worth to people too blind to see it. You stop auditioning for roles in people's lives you were never meant to play in the first place. You realize that the people who truly value you don't need to be convinced. They just know. They show up. They stay. They respect. And until you find those people, if you ever do, you walk alone with your head high. See, when you're alone, you're dangerous because you're focused, you're sharp, you're not distracted by drama or approval or fake connections. You're not out here proving anything to anyone. You've already proved it to yourself. You survived what they thought would destroy you. You kept moving when everyone expected you to collapse. You didn't fold. You didn't become bitter. You became wise. That's what standing alone teaches you. It teaches you to build your own table instead of begging for a seat at someone else's. It teaches you that silence isn't weakness, it's control. It teaches you that not everyone deserves your story, your energy, your presence. Some people are meant to be lessons, not lifelines. And once you learn that, once it really clicks in your bones, you stop clinging, you stop explaining, you stop needing anyone who made you feel like too much, because you finally understand it's better to walk alone than to walk with people who only smile when you're useful. They'll try to rewrite the story later. Oh yeah, count on it. Once they see you glowing without them, thriving in the same silence they once used to ignore you, they'll come crawling back, but not as themselves. No, they'll come with a mask. One made of guilt, dressed up in nostalgia, wrapped in excuses like, I was going through a lot, or I didn't realize what I had. And you'll feel that sting in your chest. The one that wants to believe they finally get it. But don't fall for it. Because if they valued you, they would have fought for you when it mattered. Not after the damage was done. Not after they saw you pull yourself from the wreckage they helped create. That sudden clarity they have, it's not love, it's loss. It's them realizing they no longer have access to what they once took for granted. It's not regret for what they did. It's regret that you're no longer there to tolerate it. And you, standing stronger, colder, quieter. That's the karma. That's the punchline to their joke. You healed without them. You walked through hell with no guide, no support, and no safety net, and still made it out. You know what most people fear? Not being hated. No. What they fear is being forgotten, being irrelevant, being replaced. They don't expect you to stop needing them. They think they're unforgettable, irreplaceable, untouchable. And when you prove them wrong, not with revenge, not with drama, but with complete silence, that's when the panic hits. Because now you're no longer feeding their ego. You're no longer playing their game. You've stopped trying to prove your worth to people who couldn't see it with a flashlight in the dark. And that's terrifying to them. Because now they see your value. Too late. Now they hear your silence. And it's louder than anything you ever said. They'll start watching from afar, stalking your peace, craving the energy they once treated like it was nothing. But they can't reach it anymore, because you finally realized the truth. They didn't deserve a front row seat in your life. Hell, they didn't even deserve to stand at the door. That's the shift that changes everything. When you stop basing your worth on how others treat you. When you stop begging for love that should have been given freely. When you stop explaining to people who never cared to understand. You start walking alone. And for the first time, the road makes sense. You see clearer. You breathe deeper. And you realize something powerful. You are enough. Without the crowd, without the applause, without the validation. You're enough because you're still here. After everything, after every betrayal, every silence, every fake smile, every broken promise, you're still standing, still moving, still fighting. That kind of resilience, that's not common. That's not average. That's rare. And they'll see it too. Once you stop giving them access. Once you stop explaining yourself. Once you stop letting them in just because they used to be close. Let them knock. Let them regret. But don't you ever shrink again for the comfort of cowards who couldn't handle your full light. You were never too much. You were never too intense. You were never the problem. They just weren't ready for someone who loved real. Someone who stood tall while everyone else played small. Someone who stayed loyal in a world full of backstabbers. That kind of presence, it scares weak people. They don't know how to handle realness because it exposes their fakeness. And instead of leveling up, they try to drag you down. But you didn't stay down. You learned. You rebuilt. And now you don't just stand alone. You stand unshaken. And that's where your power is. Not in how many people you keep around, but in how fearless you are when there's no one left. When you still choose peace over attention, solitude over fake company, dignity over cheap love. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you unforgettable. And they'll carry that regret like a shadow they can't outrun. You ever notice how they start watching you the moment you go quiet? Not when you were breaking down, Not when you were screaming for help. Not when you were drowning while they stood there holding the rope. No, they start watching when you finally stop explaining, when you stop reaching out, when you stop showing up for people who never showed up for you. That's when they notice. That's when it hits them. Because silence is a language they were never prepared for. They knew how to manipulate your kindness, twist your words, play with your emotions, but they don't know how to handle your absence. That's where your strength lives now. Not in shouting, not in begging, but in walking away, head down, jaw clenched, fists scarred, and heart cold, because you've realized something they hoped you'd never understand. Not everyone who stands beside you is on your side. Some people walk with you just close enough to benefit, but never close enough to bleed with you. They want your light, but not your pain. They want the fire without the burn. And when things get real, when it's time to show loyalty and depth, they vanish. Or worse, they betray. And you sat there, didn't you? Night after night, wondering what you did wrong, replaying conversations, blaming yourself, trying to figure out what you missed. But you didn't miss anything. They just didn't value you. That's it. That's the whole truth. You were too much for people who wanted too little. You offered depth to those drowning in shallow waters. And when they couldn't rise to your level, they tried to convince you that you were the problem. But you weren't. You were just ahead of them. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. They couldn't match your loyalty, your intensity, your consistency. And instead of admitting they couldn't keep up, they tried to dim your light. That's what weak people do. They break what they can't control. But you didn't stay broken. You picked up every piece, quietly, slowly, on your own. And now you shine brighter than ever. Not because they lit you up, but because they tried to put you out and failed. They're gonna hate the new you. Count on that. The quiet you, the unbothered you, the version of yourself that doesn't flinch at their name, doesn't check your phone hoping for closure, doesn't crack open old wounds just to feel something familiar. You've evolved. You've hardened. You've become exactly what they thought you never would. Untouchable. And they'll call you cold, distant, changed. Damn right you changed. Pain does that. Betrayal does that. Realizing you were surrounded by people who only clapped when it benefited them, that changes you. And thank God for it. Because that pain birthed a monster they can't reach anymore. Not because you're evil, but because you finally learned to protect your energy. You learned that being alone doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're done begging for a place at tables you built for people who couldn't even bring a fork. You've outgrown their games, outgrown their lies, outgrown the cycle of proving yourself to those who never deserved you in the first place. Now look at you, standing alone, still breathing, still building, still fighting. That strength, that's yours. You earned it. Every sleepless night, every tear you wiped on your own, every time you held your chest and said, "I'll be fine," when you knew damn well you weren't. That's the strength they couldn't break. That's the power they underestimated. And now you're dangerous because you no longer need them. You no longer need anyone who made you feel like loving you was a chore. You no longer chase people who sprinted at the first sign of your vulnerability. You're walking alone, yeah, but you're walking free. And that kind of peace, that kind of freedom, that's priceless. That's rare. That's power they'll never get back. They'll pretend like they don't care. That's the first move. They act like your absence means nothing. Like you were replaceable. Like you were just another name in their contact list. But behind that cold mask, they're burning. Because deep down they know exactly what they lost. They know they'll never find someone like you again. Someone who would have walked through fire just to keep their storm calm. Someone who didn't just show up, but stayed, even when it was hard. You were the kind of soul that people pray for and then destroy out of boredom or insecurity. And once they realize they've lost access to that kind of rare loyalty, the panic starts to creep in, quietly, slowly, like a shadow crawling across the wall at midnight. They'll watch everything you do now. Not because they love you, but because they need to confirm the thing they fear the most. That you're better without them, that you healed, that you moved on, that their presence was never your oxygen. It was just smoke. And now that the air is clean, now that you're breathing again, they feel suffocated by their own guilt, by their own silence, by the mess they made and the distance you finally built. But here's where it gets dark. They won't admit it. They won't text you that long message saying they were wrong. They won't knock on your door and fall to their knees. No, their pride won't let them. So they'll try to trigger you. Watch for it. A random like on your post. A story view at 3 a.m. A friend they send to check on you. Little things, desperate things, but don't fall for it. That's not closure. That's not redemption. That's fear. That's them realizing they fumbled something real, and now they're trying to get just a taste of your light again, even if it's from the sidelines. They'll never admit how much it kills them that you don't react, that your silence is colder than any insult they could throw, that the new version of you, the one they helped create, is no longer available for manipulation. That's the real revenge. Not shouting, not cursing. Silence. Because silence tells them you no longer care to explain your worth. You no longer need them to understand. You've moved past needing validation from people who needed you more than they ever admitted. And now you look back and you're not angry. Not anymore. You're just done. That's the scariest kind of peace. When you no longer wish them harm, you just wish them gone. Out of your head, out of your space, out of your future. That's what happens when you evolve. You stop engaging. You stop hoping. You stop waiting. And the moment you stop waiting for someone who never showed up, you win. That's the lesson. That's the punchline. You were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong people. You were trying to pull loyalty out of users, trying to build a future with people who were only passing time. But now, you get it. You've seen behind the mask. You've felt the weight of their absence. You've heard the silence, not as peace, but as truth. And you learned to let it teach you, not break you. You learned that walking alone isn't punishment. It's freedom. It's clarity. It's rebirth. Because every step you take without them is a step away from the lies, the games, the disrespect. And with each step, you find yourself again. Not the broken version, not the exhausted one, the real you, the one they never deserved to meet in full. There comes a moment in every real one's life, a cold, quiet moment, where you stop asking, why did they do this to me? And you start saying, thank God they showed me who they really are. That shift, that's where your power begins. Because it's no longer about them. It's no longer about what they did, what they said, how they lied, or how they vanished. It becomes about you, about what you tolerated, what you gave, and what you'll never allow again. That pain you felt, that wasn't weakness. That was your wake-up call. A brutal, unfiltered revelation that not everyone you call friend, love, or family is worthy of those titles. You were trying to water dead roots, trying to save people who were busy setting fire to everything you built. And when you finally let go, when you finally stopped trying to hold on to what was already rotting in your hands, that's when the healing started. That's when the fog began to lift, and you saw the truth clearly for the first time. They never loved you the way you loved them. And that's not your fault. That's their failure. They'll tell people you changed. Of course they will, because the new you doesn't serve their narrative. The new you isn't available for late-night venting sessions that end with them disappearing again. The new you isn't bending over backward to fix problems they created, so they'll paint you as cold, heartless, fake. Let them. That's just noise. Let them choke on the version of the story they created. Because deep down, when they're alone with their thoughts, when the lights are off and the crowd is gone, they know the truth. They know they lost someone rare, someone who saw them, who listened, who showed up, who stayed. And they'll remember how they watched that person walk away without slamming the door, without screaming, without revenge, just silence. That kind of exit, it echoes louder than any goodbye. louder than any breakdown, because it carries a message they'll never forget. I loved you. I gave you everything, and you still made me feel like nothing. So now I give you nothing. You see, most people are addicted to being chased. They crave the attention. They thrive on the idea that no matter how badly they mess up, you'll always come back. They play the victim, twist the truth, rewrite the past, just to keep that door cracked open. But not this time. Not anymore. Because you've learned what they never wanted you to realize. You were the prize. It was never about begging for their love. It was about remembering your own. You were the one who stayed when it got hard. The one who forgave when it was unfair. The one who listened while your own soul was screaming. And when they couldn't match that energy, they told themselves, you were too much. Number, you weren't too much. They were just not enough. And now you've raised the bar so high they can't reach you anymore. Not because you're above them, but because they refuse to grow. That's the hard truth. Growth hurts. It rips away illusions. It forces you to face people for who they really are, not who you hoped they'd be. And that's the hardest pill to swallow, that you were in love with potential. In love with the version of them they never became. And they used that against you. They knew you were loyal to their potential, not their reality. So they wore masks, told half-truths, played the part, until they didn't need to anymore, until they thought they had you hooked. But life has a way of turning tables. And now you're the one they can't reach. You're the one with your energy locked down, your heart armored, your mind sharp. You're not out here proving your worth anymore. You're not explaining yourself to people who never cared to understand. You're not begging for closure. You are the closure. Your absence is the message. Your silence is the lesson. And your peace, that's the revenge they never saw coming. And don't think for 1 second they're happy now. Don't let the fake smiles on social media fool you. Don't let the stories, the captions, the cheap substitutes they cling to distract you from the reality they're choking on every single night. See, people can replace your presence, but they can't recreate your energy. They can try to mimic your patience, your care, your loyalty, but it never hits the same, because you weren't just a person in their life. You were a force. You were that rare breed that loved without limits, gave without keeping score, and stayed long after everyone else would have left. And when they lost you, they didn't just lose a connection. They lost a mirror. You reflected everything they were pretending to be. You held up a standard they couldn't maintain. And now, every time they look into the eyes of someone new, they're haunted by everything they lost in you. That smile you had when you were happy with them, gone. That voice that once brought them peace, silent. That loyalty that could have been their legacy, history. And the sad part, they know they'll never find it again. You don't just recover from losing someone like you. Nah, you live with that. You carry it like a ghost. Because once you walk away, once you decide to protect your peace instead of saving them, you become a memory they replay every time they face someone who only gives them half of what you gave fully. And that's the part they'll never admit out loud. That's the weight they'll carry in private. Because even if they move on, even if they smile and laugh and post like they're free, they know. Deep down, in those silent moments when they're alone with their regrets, they know they had something real and they destroyed it. They know they traded gold for dust. And they'll spend the rest of their life pretending that dust shines the same. But you're done pretending. You're done playing small just to fit inside rooms where you were never truly welcome. You're done being the glue in relationships where no one else even tried to hold the pieces. You've outgrown that life. You've outgrown fake apologies, temporary loyalty, and people who only love you when it's easy. And it's not bitterness, it's not revenge, it's wisdom. It's knowing your value so clearly now that you refuse to negotiate your worth ever again. That version of you, the one who begged, who hoped, who waited for people to see your heart, that version died. And in its place stands someone stronger, colder, wiser. Someone who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't break at the first sign of loneliness. Someone who walks alone, not because they have to, but because they choose to. Because now you know, peace is better than chaos, dressed as companionship. You spent too long trying to fix people who broke you, too long hoping the ones who hurt you would suddenly heal you. But no more. Now you fix yourself. You hold your own hand. You protect your own energy. And if someone wants to be part of that, they earn it. With consistency. With respect, with actions that don't need explanations. And if they don't, then they watch from a distance like the rest of them. Because once you learn what it feels like to walk in your own power, you never let anyone drag you back into weakness again. They had their chance. They played their game. And now, the game's over. You're not coming back, not to explain, not to fix, not to reminisce. You're not a second chance. You're not a backup plan. You're a closed door with the lock changed and the key destroyed. And that's exactly how it should be. There's something sacred about standing alone after betrayal. Not the fake kind of independence people flash on social media. The real kind. The kind forged in pain, in silence. In nights where you sat with yourself, broken and breathless, with no one to blame but your own heart for believing in people who were never built to hold you, and yet You rose. You didn't post about it. You didn't scream for sympathy. You got up day after day, scar after scar. You stitched your soul back together with threads of your own strength. That's what they'll never understand. They thought leaving you would destroy you, that without their presence, you'd collapse. They thought your silence was surrender, but really, your silence was strategy. Because you weren't falling apart. You were rebuilding. Quietly. Ruthlessly. Alone. And now, you've become something untouchable. Not because you're numb. Not because you're heartless. But because you finally chose yourself. You finally decided to stop handing out love like it was an apology, to stop explaining your depth to people drowning in shallowness. And in that moment, you didn't just survive, you transformed. The world doesn't respect nice people. That's the sad truth. The more you give, the more they expect. The more loyal you are, the more they test you. Until one day, you wake up and realize you were never loved. You were used. You weren't a person to them. You were a service, a crutch, a fix, a mirror they used to feel better about themselves. And when they didn't need you anymore, when the act of pretending became too heavy, they vanished, or worse, they flipped the script and made you the villain, called you too intense, too emotional, too much. But the truth is, you were too real. And real terrifies people who live fake. Real exposes them. Real asks questions they don't want to answer. Real stays consistent when their masks start to slip. And when someone real walks away, that's when they finally realize what they lost. Not a toy, not a backup plan, but a once-in-a-lifetime soul that they were never ready to handle. Let them talk. Let them lie. Let them play victim. That's all they have left. Stories. Stories to cover the fact that they threw away something priceless because they were too blind, too selfish, too broken to hold it. Meanwhile, you walk in silence, not out of shame, but out of strength. You don't need to defend your name in rooms you've outgrown. You don't need to prove your heart to people who treated it like it was disposable. You let your absence speak. You let your peace scream. And trust me, it hurts them more than anything you could say. Because people don't expect you to stop caring. They expect you to crack, to chase, to come crawling back with your heart in your hands. But when you don't, when you go quiet and never return, that's when they feel it. That's when it hits them that you were the constant in a world full of temporary. That you were the one who meant every word, kept every promise, and stayed long after you should have left. But now you're gone. And what they feel now is not love. It's regret wearing a mask. You see, you can't lose someone who chose to find themselves. You didn't lose anything when you walked away. You freed yourself from the weight, from the confusion, from the chaos of trying to be enough for people who were never even enough for themselves. And that freedom, that silence, that solitude, it's sacred. It's rare. It's the reward for all the nights you cried yourself to sleep wondering why you were never enough. Turns out, you were too much for their small hearts, too deep for their shallow souls. And now you walk alone, not as a punishment, but as protection. You protect your heart, your peace, your energy, because not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone is meant to stand beside you. And the ones who couldn't value you when they had the chance, they don't get a second shot. They don't get a future in a story they tried to end.